let's look at the subgroup processing and mix bus. So I like to divide all of my tracks into 3 groups. The rhythm section, which is drums, percussion, bass, all of the instruments, and then the vocals. This is really useful because there's often times when I want to do just some final tweaks to overall instrument groups to get them working better together. For example, if there's some cloudy mid-range in all the instruments that's making the vocals feel like they're buried, I can just attenuate a little bit of that on the instrument bus, and it really takes care of the problem in an easy and efficient way. Or if I want to really gel all of the rhythmic elements together, I can put compression like I showed already on the rhythm bus. I use the decomp from Audioscape. And for the vocal bus, sometimes I'll do a little bit of compression there too. And then finally, for the mix bus, I use a combination of plugins and hardware. So let's walk through that. So the first thing I always put, I guess technically the first thing is a gain plugin here, which I think I'm using just to do some automation. So just bringing down the verses about 0.5 dB so that I can bring the choruses up 0.5 dB. And that essentially just helps to bring out the dynamics of the song on a macro level so that the choruses feel bigger, wider, louder, deeper. Just that tiny bit of volume changes your perception just a little bit. So that is then going into a tape plugin. So this is on the A setting, which is very transparent. It's not doing too much to the frequency response. It's just adding a little bit of harmonic color. Let's bypass this and then play it, and I'll bring it in. With you, I feel so at home. Even if we don't know where to go. With you, I don't have to hide. And even if I try, you know where to find. So the difference is very subtle, but again, it helps kind of preserve some headroom. It helps absorb some of those transients. And ultimately, that's really useful on the master bus so that the limiter doesn't have to work as hard in mastering. Next, I have Gullfoss. So I like to use this. It just smooths out the frequencies in a nice way that makes things feel, I don't know, just more consistent, like nothing is poking out too much. It's kind of similar to like a bus compressor in my mind, but it's frequency specific. So I usually limit it so it's only looking at the mid-range, maybe like 100 hertz to 10K. And then it's balancing that. Whenever it hears something poking out too much, it tucks it in. If something seems underrepresented, it brings it out. So you can see it working in real time. With you, I feel so at home. Even if we don't know where to go. With you, I don't have to hide. And even if I try. So the way I like to think about Gullfoss is it's just maximizing clarity and making sure that you're kind of squeezing as much of the details of everything out as you can. It really kind of helps to bring things forward that otherwise are a little bit buried. Granted, this is at a very subtle setting, so you're not hearing it change things drastically. This can easily become a band-aid for a poor mix if you just slap Gullfoss and turn it up to 50% or something on recover or tame. So use it mildly and it can just help smooth things out a bit and balance things in a nice way. Then I have my analog hardware chain, so I'm using the I/O plugin to send out to that and bring it back in. For the mix bus, I'm running through the Heritage Audio HA73 EQ. I'm not using the EQ at all. I'm just using this as a line amp just to add some saturation. And then that goes into the Audioscape bus comp. And for this, kind of my go-to setting is 2-to-1 ratio, 30 millisecond attack, 0.1 release, so as fast as it'll go. And then I turn the sidechain high pass filter on. And this just really does a good job of kind of more transparently gluing the track together without being too heavy-handed. Yeah, and I'm really not going for more than a couple dB of compression, and that is always enough just to kind of pull things together and have everything kind of feeling right without it pumping too much. And after that, I have the Imager plugin. So I think this is also automated, to come on during the choruses and just bring a little bit more stereo width. You can see. With you, I feel so at home, even if we don't know where to go. With you, I don't have to hide, and even if I... All right, and lastly, I just have a limiter to get it a little bit louder. I like to mix through a limiter because ultimately in mastering, it's going to be limited. So I want to hear how it's going to be pushing against that limiter and make any adjustments I need to so that it doesn't fall apart once you get it up to that standard amount of loudness. And it just makes it easier to take it to your car and listen at a normal volume that's going to be comparable to what you're listening to on Spotify and other places. And that is the mix bus. So beyond that, I do have some buses that feed into the mix bus. Here you can see I have a rhythm bus. This is the drums, percussion, bass. I talked about the compressor here. So doing a little bit of compression on all those elements, a little bit of EQ adjustments, and some clipping to manage the headroom. Instrument bus, a little bit of dynamic EQ just to tuck in some of those frequencies that compete with the vocal. So this is all the guitars and synthesizers and everything that's not vocals or drums, percussion, and bass goes to the instrument bus. And then the vocal bus, which I talked about in that video. And all of these buses are going through the Lindell 80. So they have that same kind of analog summing saturation happening on the group level as well. And then that feeds into the final mix bus. With you, I don't have to hide. And even if I try, you know where to find me. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully this is inspiring for your own music making. If you're curious about anything else in this production or have any questions in general about things I said, feel free to leave them down in the comments.